I'm Samuel Davis, and this is my showreel for the productions I worked on during CCI304. I planned to work as an in-betweener on Smiling Assassin, animal animator on Missing Mum, and I was the sole producer and animator for my own animation Road Chip. As production plans changed, Missing Mum kept me as an animal animator, Smiling Assassin no longer needed me as an in-betweener, but I did help with narrative assistance, reworking some of the story with Hannah. When working in the labs with Nick, I ended up doing a design for his can in Perfect Candidate. I stayed the sole animator and producer of my own animation. These were the goals that I set for myself this session. I'm really proud of myself because I think I did a good job meeting most of these goals. I feel that I style matched Kayla's animation really well. I'm completely comfortable in Toon Boom. I'm really happy with the own work that I produced, and I really like the teams that I worked in. I definitely fell flat on my face when it came to meeting milestones though. I just could not get them done on time. This is the timeline that I started with. I had 3 weeks designated focus period for the other productions while working on my own. I think my Gantt chart was pretty reasonable. I had a couple weeks for buffer as well in case anything went wrong. I started with my pipeline, breaking it into chunks and adding it to the Gantt chart. I'd have to minimize my production each time I didn't meet a milestone, so the list got shorter and shorter, and the second breakdown on the right is what I ended up with. I put so much effort into trying to find a Gantt chart that worked. I tried ones that were really specific, I tried ones that were more vague and worked in chunks, I tried ones that would give me an hourly schedule, but I just couldn't get my milestones finished when I planned for them to be done. Ultimately, what worked best for me was using my bullet journal. I would put down boxes and try to get at least one done each day. I designed the label for Nick's can because we were sharing the labs and I really liked how his animation was shaping up. I hid 100 kisses in the nutrition facts and added lips that he could animate to make the can talk. From the start, I knew that I would find Kayla's animation a challenge. She has very crisp line art, and that is not a style that I ever used to draw. Once my updated character sheet for Blue was approved by Kayla, I began animating. Kayla would leave a marker indicating Blue's location. I would then sketch the movement and send it to her for approval. Once that was approved, I would then keyframe an in-between. When animating the second half of my scene with Gillian, I recorded reference footage of myself from multiple different angles, doing multiple different kinds of pickups to get the right kind of movement. At its core, Road Chip is meant to be an abstract of what it feels like to live with my specific kind of arthritis that's triggered by a really weird assortment of foods. I made a lot of storyboards. I made about 6 sets of storyboards. Each set had either 6 to 10 pages worth of storyboards, and each page had 6 individual boards. And I just kept going. I couldn't stick with one idea. At one point, I sectioned the arthritis off into a character that I dubbed the Roo, and then at one point I split that one character into 2 separate characters, one being the inflammatory response and one being the actual pain that you feel when inflamed. And I just kept going and kept doing too much because I cared too much about it. So I brought myself way back, and I kind of separated myself from it for a bit and condemned myself to just 3 pages worth of storyboards. Once my storyboards became an animatic, I had a Zoom call with my sound guy, Sam Hearn. He was going to create a dummy audio for me to put alongside my visuals to make it a little easier to animate. I sent the animatic to my friend Elizabeth, who then sent me her own back. I loved how she designed the characters and designed their movements. I had dragons with wings and tails that weren't using their wings and tails. I finished my character designs that afternoon, fully embracing what Elizabeth had opened my eyes to. Being Road Chip's only animator, I made sure to keep the characters' color palettes simple. My animation work has a heavy theme on color. Each character usually only has one hue in different values, with 1 or 2 colors shared between all characters. My first concept art for Road Chip also had significance of color. I developed new concept art which was meant to emulate what a final frame could look like with the new idea. The world begins to grey and lose its color as Byron's health gets worse. I couldn't help myself, and I also redid the entirety of my animatic. I'd been struggling with my health a lot over this session, and by this point my Gantt charts were just about fully abandoned. It was simultaneously very motivating and very demotivating to be trying to make an animation about the thing that I am currently suffering through. It was even more demotivating when my sound guy suddenly left my production, but thankfully my friend Jeremy Kerr, who'd made music for me before, came in last minute and made a really good soundtrack. When animating, I wanted to prioritize good-looking movement over really clean line work. I started by drawing in the character's shape and then figuring out what pieces of them would move the most. Usually this ended up with them having a stagnant core and moving limbs. I used a mix of frame-by-frame animation, smear frames, tweens, and peg animations to get them to come to life. Because of the messy line art, the autofill tool sometimes didn't work, which means I had to go in and outline it myself, but that wasn't a huge issue. I painted each illustration in Clip Studio, exporting it into Photoshop to merge the layers and put it into a format that Toon Boom was friendly with, where I could edit the layers if I needed to. The backgrounds were done in pieces so that characters could move between layers. I used Blender to make a quick mock-up of the kitchen for the more complex shot where the camera pans and follows the character. I changed from 25 FPS on 2s to 25 FPS on 4s once I had reached the 3rd scene in an attempt to go faster and save more time. I kept my files organized, at first breaking the animation into 3 pieces which I had named Harm, Hurt, and Heal, which which I then broke into 3 other pieces so that I would feel less overwhelmed and could mark off my completion rate in chunks. In total, I had 9 pieces to finish. As I would finish each piece, I would add it to the rolling edit. I would then upload the most recent rolling edit to a Google Drive folder so that those who were working with me could see the progress. I'm genuinely devastated that I couldn't finish this animation on time, but I am really proud of what I did get done. This is definitely a learning experience, and the Sam that started this animation is very different to the Sam that finished it.